Welcome to Ancient Geeks, a podcast about two geeks of a certain age looking back on their younger selves when we discovered all these things that are geeky before they became mainstream, and soon afterwards became the core practically of American popular culture. I can't lie to you about your chances of making it through this podcast, but you have my sympathies. I'm your co-host, Tom Grant.
And I'm your co-host, Stephen Taylor, and I'm going to plant a flag and say you follow procedure when it's been set down.
Exactly. Rules exist for a reason.
Exactly.
Yes. All right. Well, if you don't understand those references, you might not have seen the movie we're going to talk about today, which is Alien. But before you get into Alien, what have you been doing lately, Stephen?
So, apart from mostly preparing for this podcast, because I'm so dedicated to our audience that I want to make sure that I'm ready to talk about these things, I think the only new thing that I've done since last we spoke was I'm continuing my march to Enterprise Season 3, which actually is in some ways better than I thought it was going to be, but I'm sure I'll
Mhm.
talk about that or write about that on the Substack at some point.
Yes, and maybe we'll talk about it on the podcast, maybe
Yes.
an aside on some episode that's Star Trek related, which we have at least a couple coming up.
Yes.
Right. So what have I been doing? I posted this on Substack, a picture of it, but I bought this incredibly cool tarot deck, Todd Alcott's sci-fi tarot deck, which uses paperback cover art from looks like the 1950s primarily as the cards. I needed a tarot deck not because I'm a tarot aficionado, but I just
You,
needed it for one of my solo role playing projects,
I
and
was hoping you were going to divine my future with your new cards.
it's bright. It's so bright you're going to need to wear sunglasses, Stephen. And speaking of that, speaking of role playing, I've also like been resisting as much as possible the slippery slope of drive-through RPG. So if you're interested in role-playing games in the here and now, and you don't necessarily want to buy an expensive hardback book, you can get practically everything in PDF form on this site. There are other ones like itch.io, but anyway, there are things I'm doing, little gewgaws to add to my solo role-playing experiences, and like they're endless. They're endless. So anyway, so I'm just exercising self-control that I don't buy anymore. All right. Okay, so we're getting into Alien. What would be your soundtrack for this episode if we could afford it?
So I'm just going to go with the theme song by Jerry Goldsmith, who of course did a great job on the soundtrack. But I'm going to be boring and plain vanilla this week.
Okay, it's a good soundtrack.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. I would pick the music from the trailer.
Okay.
Yeah, with that screeching sound in the background.
Yes.
Yeah, I that was really effective. I mean, that definitely evokes a mood.
Yes.
All right. So up front, I'm just going to say this is one of those Tom gets really enthusiastic about something episodes.
Buckle
I
up, folks.
buckle up. This is one of my favorite movies. And it's not because I'm a fan of body horror, which I'm not, but there's so many other things that are great about this movie that are frankly kind of amazing about the making of this movie.
Hmm.
That, above and beyond just telling a very compelling story with a lot of great science fiction elements in it, it is just a stunning piece of filmmaking.
Oh, I agree.
Uh, so we're going to do our reactions, going to talk about the background of the movie a bit, talk about the importance of the movie in popular culture. We won't talk about everything concerning the background of the movie because that could go on and on and on. In fact, there's a really excellent 3 hour documentary that's available on YouTube about the making of the movie Alien that I would commend anybody who's interested in this film to watch. But yeah, we'll throw in some interesting nuggets as we go here. So you had not seen this
I
movie
had not seen this
before.
movie. No.
You had not seen
So,
this movie before.
so again, this is, I think, one of those cases where our slight age differential comes into play. I was 11 years old when this movie came out. And,
Right.
and not only was
And
I 11 and it was an R-rated movie that my mother wasn't going to let me go see if I had wanted to, I was
right.
never ever into horror movies.
Yeah.
And mostly, I was thinking about it earlier. I mean, I've seen very few. I think the only quote unquote classic, even in the genre that I could think of that I went to the movies and saw, and maybe seen, period. It's Poltergeist, and that was kind of because it had this sort of Steven Spielberg
Hmm.
sprinkled magic on it.
Well, it must be
Um,
wholesome.
well, no, it wasn't that. It's just I liked those movies, and I was at that
Yeah.
point older, and it did have some of that going for it. But I mean, I've never seen Halloween. I've never seen Nightmare on Elm Street. None of that stuff appeals to me. It just doesn't.
Hmm.
I used to really hate it. Jump scare would just I did not enjoy it. I've gotten over that in many respects, but I just so I this movie was a combination of not being old enough at the time, and then just over time, I knew it was a classic. I remember the commercials being on TV,
Yeah.
and the very famous catchphrase that was associated with those commercials. But I just never saw it, and then it
But you
became
didn't say,
almost like,
"Mommy, mommy, take me to
oh hell
see
no,
this movie." And you
no.
had good parents who
Yeah, yeah, they
didn't
wouldn't have let
take an
me.
11-year-old child to this.
That's right. So, I've picked up things over the years. Obviously, I knew the basic plot, although there was quite a bit I didn't know. I've seen Spaceballs, so I had that reference in my head, which
Okay.
is which I rewatched, which is actually quite hilarious, actually, um, and uh, and whatnot. So I came to this fresh and new.
Okay. Did you wish that when you were watching that you didn't know anything about the movie?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I wrote in my notes to myself pretty much that there were a couple of times because I knew certain things were going to happen. I didn't know all of the things, and there was at least one
Hmm.
twist I had no clue about. Um, uh, that I was getting a little anxious to could we kind of get on with it because I know that we're going to get to this is going to have to happen and that's going to happen. So yeah, it would have been better, and I could certainly see because the movie just kind of starts with a sense of dread, in my opinion, and it builds.
Yes.
There's a couple of breaks in that dread. I think that when you go from the empty spaceship, or we think it's empty, and then they all wake up, get ahead of ourselves.
Hmm.
But it almost felt like it went from dread to almost like a ballet kind of like 2001 Space Odyssey kind of feel to it, with the way the lighting
Right.
and the music kind of kick in, and the sort of the so but yeah, there were times I'm like, okay, I know certain things are gonna have to happen. I knew about a face hugger. I didn't know everything about it. I
Hmm.
knew that the guy had the alien burst out of his stomach. Spoilers for anyone else that didn't see this movie
Yeah,
back in
well, of course we're going to
1970.
spoil the hell out of
Yeah,
this.
yeah. So
A nearly 50-year movie that is iconic in American popular culture. But go
I
ahead.
I wasn't certain if everyone survived or not. I knew that
Hmm.
Ripley had to survive.
Right.
But I assumed that probably nobody else survived, but I didn't know for certain. So there was a little bit of mystery in that regard.
Yeah.
But it was a very well made movie. I enjoyed it very much. My I have as with anything, a few quibbles, but nothing. I really enjoyed the movie. It was really very good.
Yeah. Well, there's only going to be at least one quibble
Sure.
with even
What?
Casablanca, you're going to have a quibble. So I saw it in the theater
Mm-hmm.
and I knew nothing about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I came about seeing it through a really geeky avenue. So here, here we go. So first of all, I saw that John Hurt was going to be in the movie, and John Hurt was impressive as hell in the BBC series that was shown on PBS in the United States, I,
Mm-hmm.
Claudius. He
Yes.
was the consummately shocking, creepy uh, portrayer of Caligula in
Mm-hmm.
this history of the early Roman Empire. You watch that and you're just amazed at John Hurt's acting ability. So I said, "Oh, well, he's going to be in the movie."
Right. No, that's totally fair.
Little did I realize, yes, he was technically in the movie, but just not for very long. The other part of it that intrigued me was that I knew Dan O'Bannon was connected to it. I mean, he's actually
Okay.
really a central person. I mean, he's the guy who came up with Ron Shusett the original idea of the movie
Mm-hmm.
and the script. But he made a movie that I'd seen also in the theater. It was a very low budget science fiction movie called Dark Star.
Right.
It was actually John Carpenter's uh, student film that
Hmm.
had morphed into a feature-length movie, though is almost zero budget movie about these. It's a comedy, and it's about a very, very dark comedy about these. three guys who are on a spaceship and they're flying around destroying planets that would be unsafe to colonize. And it had just a really great sense of humor, lots of fun in jokes. Any movie that makes a good joke about phenomenology, uh,
Phenomena. Sorry.
Buppy-dee-dee-dee.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so I really enjoyed. He stars in the movie. He wrote the movie. I thought, well, this is going to be good. If it's something that's a product of Dan O'Bannon's brain.
Right.
And the third part was Ridley Scott.
Hmm.
Alien is only his second movie,
Right.
amazingly, but I'd seen his first movie, The Duelists, and it was terrific. And that too attracted me to the movie. And then, of course, it was science fiction.
Right.
But seeing the movie for the first time in the theater, no clue what was going to happen whatsoever. Um,
So, I mean, basically, what you're confessing to is even in your teens, you were a movie geek nerd dude.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. That settled into my personhood early in life. So the trailer gave away next to nothing.
That's right.
And I don't even remember seeing the trailer. I must have, but I don't remember seeing it.
I I don't know if I ever saw that trailer, but I know I saw TV commercials that were based on that trailer.
Yeah,
I remember, of course, the in space, no one can hear you scream tagline, which was quite
right.
good.
Mhm.
And I'd remembered when I was watching the movie that the shot of the cat, which made no
Oh
sense to me.
yeah.
Um, from that.
But you know from that trailer something really bad is going to
Oh
happen.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very effective. No dialogue,
No.
you know, just the sound of the soundtrack. And it
Hmm.
also had the egg at the
Yeah, the
beginning,
egg.
which made
Mm.
you wonder, like, what the heck is with this egg
Hmm.
here?
That's right.
And then the poster was also completely uh opaque about the
That's right.
movie,
That's right.
which was brilliant. I mean, you got a few hints thematically, if
Hmm.
there's an egg in it, but that's about it.
Yes.
It can conveyed nothing beyond what you would likely to be feeling when you were sitting in the seat in the theater.
Hmm.
So hats off to whoever did the trailer and the poster. Um, it was shocking to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was stunned in a good way by the movie. I went back with a couple of friends actually. One had seen the movie, and the other one hadn't. So Joe and I had seen the movie. Sally had not. And so just before anything really horrible was going to happen, Joe and I would like crouch in our seats and like cover our eyes, like, oh no, oh no. And Sally would turn like, what? What?
Yeah, yeah. You,
What's
you
going to
all
happen?
you were bad movie companions.
Well, it was almost like an involuntary reflex. I mean, did you watch it on like a computer or a
Oh no,
TV
I
or?
watched it on a big screen TV with my surround sound. I did the whole thing.
Yeah, well, this was a, big screen theater in
Yeah.
Southern California, and the lights are down and so forth. So it was at both times, it was a pretty incredible movie experience. Speaking of 11-year-olds, the second time that I saw it, there was like a young kid in
Hmm.
the audience, and I just kept like debating, like, do I say something to the parent? Like what this seems totally weird. Like it had been out long enough that this was probably not
All
a
right.
good movie to take a kid to.
Yeah.
But
Well, I
anyway,
mean, pretty much R-rated in 1979 with the tagline "In space, no one can hear you scream," and maybe you should like
is
steer clear for a child.
yeah. So I had it. I saw this movie with sort of a mixture of wonder and horror,
Hmm.
which I think is exactly what the filmmakers had
I
intended
concur.
to inspire in their audience. Uh, and it's really hard now in retrospect to recreate how original it felt.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I can see
Uh,
that. I mean, because I was thinking about that, and not to totally derail your thought, but that's what I do, I guess. I think that the shockingness of it was probably far more so in 1979 than it is watching it in 2025.
right. And it's not just because there are lots of alien movies now, and
Right.
it's not just because people know about the chest burster and other things in the movie, and they've seen
Hmm.
pictures of the xenomorph endlessly and so forth, which we didn't call the xenomorph back then. It was
No.
just the alien. But also, there have been a lot of imitators,
Yes.
both directly, like, oh, monster in space,
Hmm.
which wasn't completely original in and of itself. And
Right.
I'm gonna rewind on that point in a moment. But also tonally, it was very different from especially science fiction movies at the time. Um,
Well, I mean, you contrast this with things we've talked about in this podcast from just roughly 25 years previous.
yeah,
This is just a whole different ball game. Not only obviously special effects are better, but I mean, to be somewhat trite, maybe it just feels more like a serious movie in
right.
its construction, in its writing, in its cinematography, in the music, in the acting. The whole thing just feels like a serious film, and not just a monster
Yeah,
movie.
right. And so I'm sure somebody listening to this has said, well, what about It, the Terror from Beyond Space? Well, let me tell you, there were movies like It, the Terror from Beyond Space in the 50s. Uh, oh, so also Planet of the Vampires, Robinson Crusoe on Mars. There were space movies with monsters,
Sure.
like Robinson Crusoe from Mars, which probably almost nobody has heard of who's listening to this. There's a really scary monster in that, this sort of combination rat, bat, and spider, that the title character who's cast away on Mars has to escape from. Anyway, so there were things like this, but as you said, they weren't A-list movies. They weren't done with
No,
this
no.
level of skill and investment. There were certainly movies in the 1970s that were science fiction and had a very cynical, downbeat sort of motif to them. Soylent Green or
Hmm.
Zardoz. Everyone's favorite Sean Connery movies, Zardoz. Uh,
Oh
silent
my.
running, but uh,
Right.
again, this was gripping. Those were often very cerebral movies. Like playing out, well, what's going to happen if we really wreck the environment, or what would happen if
Right. There.
the planet becomes overpopulated and so forth. But this is really a thriller from start to end.
Right. I mean, to link those films, like Soylent Green and Zardoz, that almost feels to me like it fits more into the Planet of the Apes category,
Yes.
in terms of both, they're serious movies, but they're kind of about post-apocalyptic or quasi-apocalyptic kinds of outcomes. And they do fit with a piece of the time as we were all worried about blowing ourselves up and whatnot. This movie, I would put more like in the 2001 category. It just feels more like that in terms of the quality and care that went into the film. And probably in
Mhm.
some ways is again like a lot of this stuff at this time is influenced by Star Wars, which was a high quality, high production value film.
Yeah. So I threatened to do a little bit of background on the movie, and this is where I'll do it. And I'm going to do it by way of the rogues gallery of creative people who were responsible for making this movie. And
Hmm.
again, at the time, I didn't, have this whole backstory, but
Of course.
we do now. So talked about Dan O'Bannon. I also mentioned Ronald Shusett. I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name. So O'Bannon had made
I'm
Dark
sure he's
Star.
listening right now. He'll be calling.
Yes, I get calls after every episode from people who are angry at us. Why don't you get any of those calls, by the way?
Well, I'm smart about keeping my number secret.
Okay. Okay. So he wanted to make a movie like Dark Star, which had an alien, which was basically an inflatable beach ball, which is part of the joke almost that
Uh,
the practical effects were so
like The
hokey.
Prisoner.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, he wanted to make a Dark Star-like movie that's a horror movie. And he and Shusett kind of went back and forth um, you know, with different drafts of the script. They went also to different producers. At one point, Roger Corman was going to make like a $1 to $2 million version of this movie.
Oh
Thank
dear.
God that did not happen. Jodorowsky was in the frame for a little while, not to make this, but O'Bannon was involved in the failed attempt to make a Dune movie before the David Lynch one. So anyway, it went through a lot of evolutions with a lot of people in the studios and lots of potential, directors or so forth, and they finally got this movie made. So first of all, Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett, who really just sort of championed the whole idea, created the script. If you watch that 3 hour documentary, they say that, one of the early drafts had basically about 85% of what you see on the screen here in it. Ridley Scott, again, can't emphasize this enough. This is his second movie, who really just dug in and fought for everything that you saw on the screen there. And not only was an incredibly skilled director, like a lot of the photography is pretty amazing. Or, when they had to come up with solutions to problems, like he wanted to have the giant spaceship,
Hmm.
that they're walking around with at the beginning of the movie, and figuring out how to do that sort of effect, just having kids in smaller spacesuits pretend to be the adults, and they could scale down the set for that sort of thing. Um, anyway, just he's certainly central to the success of this movie. Sigourney Weaver, this is her
Yes,
first movie.
I know.
Yeah, and she really carries this movie spectacularly, as the point of view character, and also really handles well the shift. Like, there's a lot of surprises in this movie, needless to say. One of them is the captain of the movie is not the protagonist.
Right,
I mean, sorry, the captain of the ship is not the protagonist.
right.
Um, so Carlo Rambaldi, the guy who actually put together the alien costume for the designs done by H.R. Giger, Jerry Goldsmith we mentioned for the soundtrack, he also did Planet of the Apes, Patton, and Chinatown, among other movies. So let's talk a little bit about the soundtrack. I listened to the Spotify, when I was taking notes for this, and one of the things I didn't realize until I listened to the soundtrack, divorced from the movie watching experience, was there were things that Goldsmith did that were sounds created by
Hmm.
musical instruments, but it didn't
Hmm.
sound like music. Like the
Right.
face hugger scene. Like,
Hmm.
huh, I assume that was a sound effect, but it was
Right.
actually the music,
Yeah, yeah.
which is also like Planet of the Apes, had these really interesting
Or even start
sounds.
Star Trek the Motion Picture, I think, in some of
Oh
the danger
yeah,
scenes.
yeah. Dong.
Your favorite noise. By the way, to preclude you from getting one of those nasty calls, and
Yeah.
Weaver had a bit part in Annie Hall.
Oh,
It was
okay.
their first lead, but
Okay.
that's just a bit of trivia for the angry fans that might want to call in and
Arr.
harangue you.
That's right. So I kind of run through these, and I haven't done the best yet. So I was saving for last, which is the production design.
Hmm.
This is a masterpiece of production design, and you had three
Yes.
critical people. Um, Chris Voss, who did the design of the exterior of the Nostromo, the spaceship,
Hmm.
and he was a science fiction paperback artist. Here we go once again with the science fiction paperbacks of the 60s and 70s. Ron Cobb, who did the interiors, and also like incredible details in the movie. Like, for example, all the little icons that you see, like in the background of the shot, like
Hmm.
something marks an airlock, and he put
Yes.
a little sticker on there to say, "Warning, this is an airlock," but it's an icon, not words. Or even like the font that they use. There's actually, I found a website that goes through the fonts of Alien
Oh, wow.
and praises it to no end
The
about the
internet
font
always
design.
provides.
Anyway, so he did the look of the ship, and then everything that was alien, and both the alien itself and its various incarnations, and the spaceship that they find, was all H.R. Giger, famously.
Yes.
Um, all right, so I kind of ran through as I said, the gallery of creative people who are responsible for making this movie successful. Is there anybody or anything from that list that you would call out?
You've done a much deeper dive on the production than I have, and I'm still in the process of really processing seeing this film for the first time. I was certainly aware of Ridley Scott as a director and subsequent work that he did in the genre, and then also the Giger contribution, which I have a comment on at the very end of the when we get to merch, I have a comment, but um, who I know was central to this very unique design. It does look different than anything else that I can think of.
Yes.
Uh, so, so I think those two are worth calling out. I mean, and of course, I mean the cast is fantastic, but I'm sure we'll talk about that in due course.
Yeah. And I just want to go on the production design, the verisimilitude for both the Nostromo and for the Alien
Yes.
is just amazing. As you said, it
No, I
didn't look
agree.
like it didn't look, the Alien does not look like anything you've ever seen before,
So,
genuinely.
so I mean, I was thinking, I mean, even now, the Nostromo has a very unique look to it, and it makes logical
Yeah.
sense. I mean, while I like my nice, sleek spaceships, really, there's no particular reason one would presume you don't need to be aerodynamic in space.
Right. Yes.
So, if you're doing something practical like mining, and you're going to take the basically a floating oil derrick into space,
Hmm.
then yeah, it can look that way, and it makes perfect sense. And then I think especially had I been watching it in 1979, it would really have been unique. I can't think of anything that is a comparison to that ship in
Hmm.
science fiction to that point. And then the alien itself also the alien ship is cool. Um, there is the whole we're not sure and it's not explained whose ship it was. And then, all of the design of the alien creatures and various manifestations is just really, truly amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and Giger clearly has his own aesthetic, and I'm not sure that anyone that can think of duplicates it. Um,
No.
anyway, so there's that. So yeah,
Though
absolutely.
he is capable of getting creeped out by things. Like in the documentary, which I'll continue to cite because it's excellent. Like he talks about worms, how he doesn't like worms. Like he
Okay.
at one point he says, "Oh, if you had the worm under your skin, oh,
Yes.
see it's
Yes.
moving around." Ugh.
Exactly.
All right. Oh, I've been waiting almost 50 years to do my HR Giger impression, so that's why we do this podcast for those sorts of
Sure.
such a magical moments. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the movie, kind of section by section. We're not going to go into deep dive on individual scenes, but you have the awakening at the beginning, which
Yes.
I really liked when I first saw it because it had both like the kind of the spooky feeling of all the machines turning on,
Yes.
and then you had that kind of lovely way that,
Hmm.
the cryogenic pods had opened up. It was
Yes.
like that was like at the first, get-go of this movie. It's like, boy, someone has put a lot of thought and effort into making a really cool looking science fiction film.
Yes. Agreed. No, again, like I said earlier in the podcast, there is this sense of I don't know what's going on, and even I think even if I'd not known anything about the movie, you do know you go into this I think knowing there's something it's a horror movie of some kind. So, are we starting in the middle of already a crisis? Is already something what's been going on here? Why is everything turned off? Why is it all dark? And also, I will say to the production design element of it, and to sort of echo some things you said a minute ago, it doesn't have that bright, shiny look like of a Starfleet starship. It is a lived-in place.
Yes.
Um, and then there is this shift when the it opens almost like a flower, and they get
Yeah.
out, and the whole thing. It's great, yeah.
Yeah. And then you meet the crew.
And they're kind of
Uh,
surly, which is also different.
yeah. Well, so, probably everybody who's a fan of this movie has heard the phrase space truckers,
Mm,
because this is a, very working class crew of people. They're just kind of, moving things around from point A to point B in the galaxy as part of this mining operation. Um, that was also different, right? Like space
yeah.
crews were all highly trained professionals in most other
Yes.
movies you'd seen. They were scientists and so forth, and just ordinary Joes and Janes was
Well, I
really
wrote
different.
down space capitalism at one point, but then it was also, they're arguing about their shares and what their,
Oh yeah,
what the contract obligated them to do. And I think a trope that's been more explored since then, but I think it was much more unique at the time.
yeah,
Although I will
yeah.
point out more smoking in space. What is up with the smoking in space?
Not a good idea, no matter
And it
how
hit
big the spaceship is.
exactly to take a detour that I take probably way too often. I am so grateful that it was decided that they not smoke on the Enterprise and Star Trek. Can you imagine watching the original series? Because they all were
Yeah.
smokers, and I remember reading somewhere there was a decision not to have them smoke on screen.
Huh.
And because again, I mean, this is not quite as bad as Charlton Heston smoking in Planet of the Apes. I mean, tiny, tiny,
Oh
but
yeah.
holy cow, man!
Yeah, the captain's chair would need an ashtray
Yeah,
built
that's
in
right.
then.
Get a patch, get some gum, do
I
something,
yeah, I think probably tobacco would have been drastically reduced by
or
the 23rd century.
have a space. I mean, we have vapes now. Have a space cigarette. I don't know something. It just. I'm sorry.
Planet of the Vapes.
Eh, you know what? There's got to be a vape store somewhere because they love those puns on those vape stores. There's got to be one
Yeah,
called Planet of the Vapes.
there must be. All right, we'll look that up after we finish recording. Okay, because it's essential for the
Oh,
sake of our
it's
audience that we track that down for them. Okay. So there's, we get to kind of get to know these characters a little bit. Was there any kind of standout acting or any standout characters to you
what?
through to not just here but through the movie?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, I knew most of these actors pretty intimately. So I mean, one to get geeky for a moment. I mean, Sigourney Weaver, of course, is in Ghostbusters. She's in Avatar, which I haven't seen, but she becomes an important genre actress in her own right. Of course, the
Mm,
other Alien movies. John Hurt was the War Doctor. Ian Holm was both Frodo on the BBC radio series and Bilbo in the movies.
mm.
And it just the that all part. Of course, Harry Dean Stan's a major actor. This is Veronica Cartwright still working. This is and Tom Skerritt is Tom Skerritt. So this is a really
Yeah.
impressive cast
Hmm.
to begin with. So, and I was struck by sort of all of them. I thought that I enjoyed the interplay with Parker and Brett, the Harry Dean Stanton character, and the Yaphet Kotto character, because they're like kind of the second class citizens, I guess, because they're the ones arguing
Yeah.
about they're like the engineers or the grunts or the mechanics. Like, it's not totally clear what everyone's role is, to be honest,
Hmm.
at least on
Right.
first viewing.
But there's a
Uh,
little bit of stratification
oh,
among the
clearly,
crew members.
clearly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you know, the captain, Tom Skerritt's character Dallas, is the only one that has access to a mother, the computer that runs the ship. Those sort of interesting little thing where they has to go in that little chamber and type in questions,
Right.
as opposed to everyone having access. And if I was trying to think at the time, what would I have thought about Sigourney Weaver's character at the beginning? Because it's not, I know she's the central character because I
Hmm.
know she's the central character, but I don't know
Right.
that when the movie first starts, there's no reason to assume she's going to be the one that survives or is the one that is central. In
Yeah.
fact, until the point in time that, the reference about not opening up the doors and letting the guy with the face hugger in with Kane back into the
Hmm.
ship. That's I think the first time it hit me that oh yeah, she's important to the story and she also has some strength as a character, which I appreciated. Um, and Ian Holm does a great job as Ash. We'll talk about that more in a minute. I
Hmm.
enjoyed every one of the actors in this film.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. And as you said, it was kind of very obvious that there was stratification, but done very
Yes.
subtly.
Yeah,
Not just from the script, but also the performances.
I
Like
agree.
Yaphet
So,
Kotto and Harry Dean Stanton are kind of joking around,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they're very relaxed and so forth. Dallas, the captain, Tom Skerritt's character, is kind of aloof from everybody.
That's the word that
Yeah,
I was going to use as well.
yeah.
Yes. Um, I also noticed that, speaking of Ash, the Ian Holm character, the science officer, um, there is a subtle evolution in his behavior during the film. I did notice at one point early on, he's sitting in, I can't remember if it was, I think it was Yaphet Kotto's seat. And he's like, that's my seat. And he gets up. He almost struck me as kind of a little wimpy and a little nippishy until
Yeah.
later he becomes a little more um, suspicious in his behavior. Um, and I did notice it, and I think it's fairly subtle and well done. 'Cause that's the one I did not. thing I did not know anything about. I did not know about the robot bit. So that was all, that was a twist for me,
Hmm.
which I have thoughts about, but that clearly surprised me. I knew that there was something wrong with him. I thought maybe he was either I thought maybe he was being somehow influenced by the alien. That was
Hmm.
my first thought. Although I knew that didn't totally make sense based on what I thought I knew about the xenomorph, but I didn't know that much, so maybe I was wrong. Plus, he was dumb enough to stick his face like right into the tissue sample. I'm like, what the hell are you doing, buddy? This thing,
Yeah.
it's already demonstrated to have acid blood. Maybe you should like have
Hmm.
some protective gear on when you look at this thing. But anyway, um, I will say something about the cast that I think is interesting to me, and I don't want to make a big deal about it. Um, but it's still something I've been thinking about a lot as we go through these various movies and TV shows and reading current critiques about inclusion in movie and TV. So on the one hand, right, and I'd read this before I knew this as a sort of established bit of lore about this movie that the way the movie was written, the characters were all written with no necessarily any gender involved. And then
Right.
they were cast, and the Ripley character could have been a male, which so on one
And
level, I
was
think,
in one of the earlier drafts.
yeah. So I think that this could be a case of it is revolutionary in that sense. The idea of centering it not on the captain by itself is kind of interesting.
Hmm.
That the captain not being the hero at the end of the day, a female in an action movie, a horror movie, not just being a victim, but being the one that is actually triumphs over the monster is, I think, revolutionary. The part that I thought was still noteworthy, even knowing that the script was written in a way that the characters could all have different genders. In fact, I don't know if in this, I know that we find out later at some point her first name is Ellen. I
Hmm.
don't think in this movie any of these people have first names. So it's all
Yeah.
last names. I don't even
Right.
think in the credits they have last first names. So they all could theoretically be any gender, uh, depending on how it's
Hmm.
cast. I think it's noteworthy. So for a movie in 1979 to center the female as the lead in an action movie, I think is noteworthy. I think, but I also pay a lot of attention these days for reasons that maybe are not that interesting. But hey, it's a podcast, so I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about, which is there's a lot of critique about maybe over some fans think there's overcorrection in casting like black captains on Star Trek or gay characters or whatever the case may be, or not having enough white dudes. And I think this is an interesting example of this. On the one hand, there is clearly a shift in the gender role for this movie that's of great consequence. But still, when you have seven crew members, but when the casting is done, what do you end up with? We'll still have five males and you only have one person of color in this cast. And I think that's a good example of this long-term evolution. That it's still centering the cast around white men. And I'm not saying that as a negative about the movie. I'm pointing it out as a historical artifact of the long-term evolution of the way in which these things are cast. Even when you're engaging in a more gender-neutral kind of writing, that you still end up centering most of the cast around white guys.
Right.
And I think when current people make these critiques about what is being done in regards to diversity in casting, that this is the kind of thing that there's still attention with. Anyway, that and and you may want to cut all that out in the editing, but I just thought I would bring it up because I found it interesting.
Well, if I cut it out, I won't tell you. So no worries. What I'd say about it is the white men in the crew.
Mhm.
All right, so one of them dies right away.
Yes,
Again, the person I was most excited seeing in this movie dies right away.
right,
You have the captain who's he's not feckless, but he's just, not the central mover
right,
of the plot. One of them is a secret android.
right.
Yeah, one of them is kind of a working class schlub.
Sure,
Anyway, I remember at the time there was no fanfare about Ripley being
right.
the protagonist. None,
No,
right? Like no,
right.
like the studio wasn't making a big deal about it. I don't remember seeing it in newspaper reviews of the movie or anything. It was just sort
Hmm.
of like, okay, great. That's Sigourney Weaver's a terrific actress. I look forward to seeing her in more things. I mean, that was more the reaction than this sort of self-conscious. We have a
No,
woman in
and
this
I
movie who's
do
the
accept
who's the
that.
tough character.
Sure. And although I think that became more the case with aliens, even I picked up on that paying only semi attention. And I don't, that's fine. I don't, I think that, well, one thing I think the way this movie was dealt with in terms of its general promotion, as you pointed out about the trailer and about the poster, was to reveal as little as possible.
Right.
So I think I think what I'm getting at, and maybe it's clumsy. I there's an ongoing, I think, important attempt to be more diverse in casting, um, and there's a backlash to it. And I understand the backlash, and I think part of what you just described is why there is a backlash, which is often, although I think less than people actually think is true, there is an see, we're doing this thing, right? They want to talk about how they're being diverse.
Right. It's didactic
Although
in
I
a really
think
heavy-handed way.
I think that I think the perception of that didacticness is probably bigger than the didacticness itself, in all honesty.
Well, for some
Um,
people, it certainly is.
yeah. So I think that I think it's interesting to note, or it's noteworthy in terms of long-term comparisons, as my brain tends to work,
Mhm.
is one of the things that was true about much of what we watch. It's like I pointed out in Planet of the Apes, right? You've got now you have a person of color, a female, but there's still two white dudes. There's two white dudes, a black guy, and a dead female that are in the spaceship.
Right.
There tends to be, even when there is some diversity, there tends to be a centering on the white male characters. That's just true. And you know, and in this case, I just the casting itself still reflects that, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And I think it's a more unconscious part of the way in which we do things as a society more than it is any kind of specific attempt to do that centering, but it's still present. And I think that when you look at current contemporary media and you try to understand what's going on there and what's an appropriate critique of that casting now, if that casting is more diverse than it used to be, what's being reacted to in the past is what I'm trying to get at. There's a
Mhm.
baseline here for conversation that I think is important.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the kind of the sequences of scenes in this movie. So they get this message, they have to divert to the planet where this signal is coming from. They land there, and you also kind of now kind of see not just that you have these very confined sets, but once they get outside the ship and the lander, uh,
Hmm.
it looks massive.
It does.
And again, they did this by having child actors, including Ridley Scott's kids, in the spacesuits and smaller versions of the spacesuits, which the spacesuits were really cool, I
They
thought.
were. They were.
Standing next to one of the landing struts, which looks just enormous.
Hmm.
One of many sort of gosh wow moments. And
Yes.
then they trek over, they find the very weird looking torus shaped spaceship. They go inside, and this is where the alienness of things in this movie gets cranked up really early to 11.
Hmm. Agreed.
Yeah,
I also like during the scene, the sound design is really good because it helps
yeah,
amp up the sense of a little bit of dread and also of um, the degree to which the crew that's on the surface is kind of on their own because it's just you can't even fully always understand what they're saying entirely.
right.
And it has a kind of low tech kind of feel to it. Like they're on their own as they go to this big ship,
Yeah,
even if they can't kind of communicate back.
yeah, with crackling
Yeah, exactly.
transmissions and poor video, and anyway,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. And the, kind of again, we all know who Giger is, and we've seen his
Hmm.
drawings now, but this was the first time for a lot of us to see an alien spaceship, which doesn't look like all the smoothness of it.
Hmm.
Instead of angles, you had curves, the biological look of everything, what Giger himself called techno or organic. Was just fascinating. They go in, they start walking around, they find what's called the space jockey, the dead giant alien sitting in a
Right.
chair, with some sort of apparatus attached to the chair. It's not clear what
Right.
that does. And you get your first little bit of foreshadowing,
Yes.
the wound in the side of the space jockey. And then they find the egg chamber.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's where my foreknowledge sort of didn't spoil it, but I'm like, okay, I know what that means. That the
Right,
But you wouldn't have known the first time you watched the movie
right.
why his
This,
chest was blown out.
oh yeah, which again, seeing it the second time when I was much younger, he's like, oh, okay, yes, now I
Yeah,
get it.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
because I noticed it the first time and
Right,
just thought, well, maybe it's old and
right.
something had rotted through and collapsed or something like, oh no, that's actually kind of significant. The other thing was really freaky seeing this the second time was the room full of eggs, right?
Hmm.
Like immediately we're all focused on what happens to Kane with the face
Right,
hugger and
right,
getting
right.
back to the ship and so forth. But the second time it's like, wow, that's a lot of eggs. What were they doing with them?
Yes,
And what's going to
indeed.
happen to them
Right.
after all said and done? That was kind of disturbing. Another little bit of trivia, the laser light effect.
Hmm.
That was courtesy of The Who. Like at the film studio where they shot this, like at another part of the studio, The Who were doing something and they loaned their laser light effects for
That's
that
funny.
scene. Yeah.
That's funny.
So there's the egg chamber, which seems deliberately created for some weird reason. It's never
Hmm.
explained. By the way, a constant theme for me in this podcast, and especially in this particular episode, is I don't need to know the background for
Hmm.
everything. You don't have to explain it all to me. It's
No, I
just
agree.
disturbing and leave it there.
Hmm.
Um, so then they could do exactly what people would do, not knowing necessarily the peril, which wasn't as stupid as things done in later alien movies, which was, oh, what are these things? Let's go down and see. So they clamber down, and there's now the famous scene of the face hugger popping out of the egg,
Yes.
which it sounds like you knew that was going to happen.
I knew there was a face hugger, and I figured that's what was going to happen. I was struck that while that is a shocking scene, it's not as graphic as it might have been if it was made now.
Yes.
I think we would have seen his face being totally engulfed on screen, which
Oh,
we
sure, and
don't.
you do in sequels.
I'm sure you do. So
Yeah,
I,
it's just
I
all
don't
these
know.
quick cuts of, something,
Yes,
like he's
yes,
looking over there, there's something living in there and it pops out at him and he falls back and it's all happened so fast with so many
yes.
different cuts and it's no less effective for that. In
No,
fact,
I totally
I think
agree
it's
with that.
more effective.
I agree with that.
Like what the hell
So,
happened here?
so to your point, because I know it's an ongoing theme that we have, because I think about these things too. I would totally agree with you that I don't need to know all the background and the story. While one might be interested in finding out, nothing about this movie made me go, I had to have an explanation, especially in the moment. I think though that unlike some other things we've talked about, where I was a little more critical on that point, I don't think the movie even points me in that direction. There's not even a
Mhm.
false like I don't know dodge that you should know something else about what's going on. All that matters is you're encountering this the same way the characters are encountering it, which is they don't
Right.
know,
Yeah.
and they're trying to solve a mystery. So I don't at that point need to know. Um, and even at the end of the movie, I mean, maybe I'm curious, but the narrative itself never requires me to have to think about why I would want to know these things, right?
Right.
Except the only part, of course, that it does that makes me go, huh, that the company knows about these things, that does raise a question that I would like to have answered, right?
Right. Right.
But I don't think the narrative itself makes me ask the question why the egg's there in any particular, except sort of in a generic kind of way.
Yeah. One thing I like a couple of things about this particular sequence I really like how they're shot. I'll finish the thought about the way that the face hugger jumps out and all the quick
Hmm.
cuts. It kind of in retrospect makes it feel like the experience of unfortunately when something really bad happens to you, like you
Hmm.
get into a car accident,
Hmm.
and it's like you're not fully aware of what's
That's right.
happening.
Yeah, sure, sure.
It's not like seeing a movie
Right.
play
That's right.
out in perfect fidelity and perfect detail in front of you. The other thing was like when the light shines behind the egg and you can see
Hmm.
something
Yes.
twitching in
That,
there. That was really effective, I
it
thought.
was. I agree.
Okay, so they take Kane back, as you mentioned. There's this uh, angry exchange about quarantine and bringing
Yes.
bringing him back onto the ship. Ash lets the door open
Yes.
to again, like, what's up with this guy?
Yeah, I mean, so let's pause. I mean, it's funny. It's just really I was and again, maybe it's I know it is. It is absolutely the way in which the moment in time in which you watch a particular piece of art will trigger something, I think, more than it otherwise would.
Hmm.
And not to go down this pathway too much, but I think we're in a period of time in which, respecting long established procedures established by
Yes.
experts is kind of on my mind. And
Hmm.
so I almost texted you then. Oh, this is a
Yeah.
movie about the importance of following bureaucratic procedures.
No, protocols.
Yeah.
Protocols. Say
So,
that, not bureaucratic. Protocols like scientific protocols
yeah,
or
a more
biological
I wrote
protocols.
down a moral for our time. And so in some ways,
Yeah.
this was and I think part of why at that point in time I didn't suspect Ash is because Dallas was also arguing to open the damn door, right?
Yes.
It was Ripley who was saying these are the way this you're endangering the entire crew. And in fact, in some ways, as I knew that's exactly what was happening, I was looking forward to the moment in which she could tell Ash, "I told you so,"
Yes.
which doesn't come because it for reasons because he didn't care. But I was almost looking forward to him getting killed by the alien because, dumbass, you don't open the door under
Right.
these circumstances. So that was that moment. I think that scene really sticks in my head as sort of central to this movie, maybe because of outside influences on my brain.
Right. But in this movie, I would say there's all these different horror tropes that lesser movies follow in order to keep the story moving
Mhm.
forward. And they really center a lot on people doing stupid things, clearly stupid things, right? This is a natural
Oh,
reaction.
you mean like what's his name? Brett going into the chain room by himself?
That was not great. Okay, but there was a minimum of let's all split up.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I'll go
I agree.
down into
Yeah,
the
yeah,
basement with a
yeah.
candle, and
Sure, sure, sure.
anyway, these were not stupid people. Like they were
No, I
responding
agree.
to an amazingly novel situation.
Yes.
That they were like just focused on surviving, and I never felt watching this movie like, oh, come on, why did they do that? Other than the writer needed to get
Right,
to
right,
the
right.
next scene.
No, I think
Um,
that's yeah.
yeah, so then they bring they bring Kane in. He's got the face hugger on his head. They can't extract it. Clearly, this thing is going to kill him if they
Hmm.
try. Also, its blood is acid, as they discover.
Very powerful acid.
Yeah, incredibly, just eats through the decks, below
Yeah,
them.
that's a great scene.
Yeah, just ugh. Um, and then then he's fine, right? That later
Yeah,
on, Ripley finds it's off his head, and the dead thing falls on her, and that was a good jump scare. I don't
yeah,
usually love jump scares,
yeah,
but
yeah. It was
that
good.
was a good one. And then he seems okay. Now, and that was one of those moments, when you clearly know things are not okay,
Sure.
but you don't know
In what
where
way
you're
did
going.
that's right. That's fair.
Right.
Except unless you know that he's gonna have a thing burst out of his chest, which I did. I just was questioning when it was gonna happen.
Right. But of course, we back in
Sure.
the
Absolutely.
1970s didn't
Absolutely.
know this. And that to me really is, I think, really a sort of a marker in the history of at least this franchise, that not knowing what's going to happen next is
Hmm.
really not just like the hallmark of a good horror movie or science fiction movie.
Right.
It's like good movies, right? You just, whether it's a spy movie and you don't know who the villains behind the scenes really are, and there's an interesting twist, or a different sort of genre movie like a mystery where it's all
Hmm.
about not knowing necessarily up front what's going on, that's really important. And unfortunately, when you make a lot of sequels, everything has to refer back to
Sure.
the existing canon, things we've already established, and so the opportunity to be really surprising
Sure.
diminishes, where this movie is nothing but surprises.
It's full of surprises. I mean, I I do see in my notes, and I not to contradict your general assessment. I think these people are actually far better than your typical horror movie. But I did write down this is definitely a horror movie, and I'm quoting myself because the people aren't very smart given the situation. By which I mean
Mhm.
things like letting him in the first place was not smart, but I understand why
No.
it happened. Uh, After the acid blood, the fact that any of them touched any of that stuff without all kinds of just drove me crazy. They picked up
Yeah.
the skin, they touched the husk, and then of course
Yeah.
never go into the chain room,
Don't
the
go in the
dark
chain room.
chain. But I mean, and I should
Hmm.
skip ahead. The only other thing that bumped me, I I, I love my cat, but I hate to say it, maybe I'm going to be revealed to be, and the people will call you and complain about my cruelty.
Hmm.
If I were being chased by a xenomorph and I've got like whatever the time frame was, 7 minutes to get the hell out the ship,
Hmm.
and I didn't know where the cat was, I don't think I'd go looking for the cat. Especially she's supposed to be getting the shuttle ready to leave. I know I'm skipping ahead, but I mean, that part that part kind of annoyed me. That felt like a horror movie to me. An excuse to put the main character in peril that maybe shouldn't have happened because of a bad choice.
You know, hearing what you're saying here, we're talking about a monster movie, and
Yes,
you're the monster, Stephen. You cat hating monster.
that's right.
All right. They dissect the face hugger.
Yes.
Again, really great effect.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, looks like an actual living
Absolutely.
creature.
It's
Just
gross.
yeah, it's incredibly gross. The face, the chest burster sequence happens.
Oh yeah.
There apparently the actors knew that there was going to be something popping out, but they didn't know there was going to be blood flying everywhere.
Uh,
So those are
surprise.
those are very genuine reactions,
Mm.
especially on the part of Veronica Cartwright, who got really doused with blood in that sequence.
At least it didn't turn to Ridley Scott and go, "What the hell, man?"
I'm off this movie.
That's right.
Uh, okay, and so this thing scurries off, and then the middle part of
Mhm.
their movie is like them trying to
Find it. Yeah.
find it and not realizing immediately that it's turned into something much bigger, which was
Oh yes.
probably my only one beef with the movie was like, how did it grow up that
That
fast?
fast. It's a great question. I did
Yeah.
think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, at the time I thought, okay, I'm stretching my credibility here, but I'm willing to do it to play along with the movie.
Because it's huge.
It's huge and it's weird
Hmm.
with pipes coming out of its back and like the semi-translucent head, and the head itself is this long oblong thing, and
Yeah. I mean, what are Giger's nightmares like?
I hesitated. It's probably involves fluffy bunnies.
That's right. That's right. It's
If this is his
unicorns and
daytime experience,
that's right.
it's Elmo.
And
Elmo
the,
petting a bunny.
and the Teletubbies.
Um, and you never really see much of the alien, which is
No.
again one of the other genius things about this movie, is it's much scarier because you don't get a brightly lit look at
Hmm.
it. It's
Sure.
only on screen for a few minutes. When it ambushes Dallas, you just see it in the light for a second and then
That's
it's
right.
gone. And then here you have what is sort of a very much familiar horror movie uh, trope, which is then, characters are killed one by one
Yes.
through the course of the movie. But again, they're not, except for maybe Brett going into the chain room, it's not completely implausible what they're doing.
No, that's the only scene that I was a little like, okay, I kind of understand the notion they have to get the cat because the cat was messing up their search. But him going off by himself and into the into the chain room. And I also didn't understand why it was raining inside the ship. Um,
I thought it was like condensation for some reason,
yeah,
and that part of the ship maybe not as well
yeah,
maintained as it should have
maybe
been.
so. It was
I
clean
mean,
water.
I've
That
got
that was awesome.
I've got an air conditioning unit sitting right here to my left, up on the top of the wall, and the filter needed to be cleaned. I didn't realize it had gotten dirty and it started to drip water. So maybe if you
Did you
took
did you
that on a bigger scale.
did you stand under and let it like drip on your hat and stuff?
Yeah, I took my hat off and then doused myself in it and didn't
Sure, that's
notice
what
what was on the ceiling above
that's the
me.
problem.
By the way, another giant set, just
Yeah,
like
the
looking
sets were,
up.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
impressive.
The
Very
other, and
impressive.
that's like one of the unusual parts of the set being that large and open because really the hallmark of the sets in this movie is that they're closed and confined.
Hmm.
In fact, all the rooms here were actually connected on the movie set.
Cool.
So when the actors went in, they would
Hmm.
have to kind of move through room by room through those corridors that you saw.
Yeah, it was a well designed set for certain.
Yeah. Just terrific. The sense of confinement in the
Yes.
movie is fantastic. Um, Anything about the middle before, the final part of the movie where she escapes from the ship? Anything you want to call out on the middle
Well,
part?
we need to talk about the robot reveal.
Oh yes, of course we have to talk about the
So
robot
I,
reveal.
I will say that, like I said, I at some point it was clear that Ash was being more detached than he should be given the circumstances. And it was very subtly done. It was background stuff mostly. I just happened to notice his reaction as compared to his shipmates. Um, and even I really I thought there was something up with him, but I didn't. I
Hmm.
thought maybe the alien was controlling him. I didn't know what was going on. Um, and the robot thing is definitely a twist I did not expect. Now, as you and I talked offline, I'll bring it up now. Part of me kind of didn't like. I would have preferred him just to have been a human agent of the company because the
Hmm.
robot was so sophisticated that it just almost felt like even way beyond technology, that even the technology that we're seeing on the show, on the movie, that
Hmm.
kind of, I don't know. Plus, when again, the Giger-esque innards of the robot, I thought, is he like an alien too for a second? Because it's all kind of like white and kind of organic-y looking in a way
Yeah.
that looked like some of the alien. I was slightly confused by that at first until I think it was Parker who yells out, "He's a robot," or something like that, or they
Hmm.
put us, whatever. So, which also raises the question: if you can have that sophisticated a robot, why are these people out here in the first place? It was a little. Again, this is my sci-fi brain maybe going way out of control over a particular scene. But I certainly was profoundly surprised by the reveal.
Yeah, I guess I disagree. I mean, I think the movie is saying Wayland Yutani, the company that's funding this ship,
Hmm.
is amoral.
Yes,
And that if you want to send a truly amoral agent
sure.
to make sure that you get the outcome you want from this mission, even if it means that everybody dies,
Yes.
what better choice than a robot?
No, sure, but I think there's this clear theme that's set forth from the very beginning, as we discussed when uh, Brett and Parker are complaining about their shares, that money is a big motivator in this
Right.
this future, and the notion that someone could be a trader for money, even if it meant their shipmates all being killed, struck me as totally
Oh,
plausible. Although on
okay.
the flip side, the one thing I will say that makes sense as I think about it. Um, a human probably would have been killed by the alien too, an alien agent. So you needed a human agent would have been killed.
Hmm.
So you needed something to help force the ship back.
Right.
I don't know. Or maybe they could have lied to him. I don't know. It bumped me a little bit. It's not a huge critique. This is a really good movie. Um, but anyway, that was just something that I guess I'd already written partially my own script at that point, and then
Okay.
it went off the rail. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, I'll say this about this sequence in the movie. So the movie's already hitting you with a lot of horror, right?
Yes.
The horror of what happens to Kane, the horror of being stuck in this very confined space with this murderous creature. And then, although there was a little bit of setup at the beginning, with the company saying, "Okay, we're taking you,
Hmm.
out of your normal, cryo sleep, so you can go investigate this planet because there's something important there." So they clearly
Right.
knew something. But then you kind of lose track of that in the movie, and then you come back to it here. Is that it's the sort of the horror, as you said, of other people,
Yes.
right? Yeah, that Ash is speaking things not just in the voice of a robot, but a voice of the company.
Right.
So, like, I just have one of the quotes here. Um, I admire its purity, a survivor, unclouded by conscience, remorse, or delusions of morality. And I remember that was pretty chilling when I first saw
Hmm.
this. Just wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They are really screwed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's certain. That much is certain.
yeah. And I certainly would have taken a flamethrower to him too.
Although I will say, in speaking of sort of horror, and it was kind of an odd thing, but trying to basically kill her with a magazine was something else. That was a pretty
Yeah,
grotesque scene. Although it is interesting to know that in 20, whatever the heck this is, girly magazines make a comeback.
that's true. That's true. All right. So nothing else about the middle section?
Yeah, I think that's all I had
Yeah, I mean the
specifically.
moments when we see the alien, it's really interesting. Like things we didn't expect, like for example, the second set of jaws that pop out.
Hmm.
That's another WTF moment
Yeah,
when
very.
that
It's
happens.
the geeker of it all.
Yeah. Or, I know you're not a fan of as much of the big room with the chains, but it kind of
Oh
dropping
no, it's
down
a
slowly like a spider.
no.
Ooh,
It was a good
yeah.
scene in that sense. That was the most that scene is the most classically horror movie scene in the movie. Is all that I'm saying.
Yeah. And then we have the resolution.
Hmm.
Everyone's died or is dying, or going to die in a moment. Ripley's getting off the ship after setting the self-destruct and going to the escape shuttle. Um, she gets in the shuttle, doesn't know that the alien actually is hiding in there. That was another just sort of wow scene. Like it's there in the
Yes.
shot, but
Yes.
it doesn't register that
Hmm.
the monster is there on the ship with her until she accidentally rouses it a little bit.
Right.
And
Right.
that was
Right.
like a jump out of your skin moment, which doesn't
Sure.
get the same level of attention as some of the previous ones, like the chest burster one. But
Right.
I
Oh
mean,
no.
I remember the few inches between my posterior and the seat suddenly opening up when that happened.
Yeah, it was a good scene. It's a great scene.
Yeah, and then her getting into the space suit,
Hmm.
while singing that "My Lucky Star" song and blasting it out of the airlock.
Hmm.
Um, Anything you want to say about that?
No, I mean, there's the build-up scene before, and this is perhaps I made my cat critique, but I there was some confusion to me, and maybe it's just because of one viewing. Um, she goes to the shuttle. Uh, Parker and Lambert are getting the coolant.
Hmm.
Um, there's X number of minutes. I think it was 7 minutes, but I could be mistaken about that. She sets the self-destruct, goes to the shuttle, and there's the whole thing with the. Now, there's some great scenes with strobe lights and stuff that which is beautifully shot as she's
Oh
going
yeah.
through um, and there certainly is a sense of impending doom in the whole thing, which I think is well done. I got a little confused as to why she decided to turn the self-destruct off
Hmm.
and then couldn't. And it almost, I don't know, that part felt a little like, I don't know, it's a little confused to me as to what's going on and why. Between
Okay.
why is she worried about the cat and then why did she decide to turn the self-destruct off and she can't and then gets in the shuttle anyway. Anyway, it was just, I was a little confused during part of that. I've only seen it one time, so.
Yeah. Well, speaking of protocol, I was worried that the cat had been impregnated somehow.
Yeah, I think I thought about that at one point as well.
Yeah.
But it's so
Eh,
tiny.
It's so tiny. Anyway, and so she blasts it. I mean, that was good,
No,
that
that was,
like, hey, she another like exciting twist you didn't see coming, that like it goes out the door, but then it's on the end of the
yes,
cable and it's
because the cable gets
starting to
stuck in the
pull.
door and yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah. And obviously in the theater when she turns on the engines and
Oh
blasts it,
yeah,
that's like
of
everybody cheering,
of course.
thank God.
That's right. That's right.
Then she goes back into cryo sleep, and we're off to the next movie, which we
That's
didn't
right.
know that there was going to be another movie. It wasn't clear there
And
was going to be a sequel to
well, it was
this.
years later, right? It was like 6 or 7 years later, something like that.
Right. Yeah. So James Cameron's Aliens,
Hmm.
a different
Which is
director, and
now on my list of things to watch.
and a different type of movie. There's horrific
Yes.
elements in it, but closer to an action movie
Hmm. That
than
much
this
I
ever was.
understand to be the case, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
and I wasn't horrified when I learned there was going to be a sequel. I just didn't want them to screw it
Hmm.
up, right? Alien never felt like a movie that needed a sequel. But it's
No,
Hollywood, so if
I
something's
can,
successful.
sure, sure.
Um, so important beats in this movie. I think we've covered a lot of these already. The
Yes.
alienness of things,
Hmm.
uh, cosmic horror. You hear that phrase batted around a lot, particularly among fans of H.P. Lovecraft, but this is where the universe is either kind of just indifferent to you,
Mhm.
just who cares if you're a human being, a talking ape, so what? But often actively hostile towards you,
Yes.
which is a very different view of space travel than you would get in most other movies. The
Well,
company doesn't, yeah, go ahead.
there doesn't appear to be a whole lot of let's be friends with this thing. If we just could talk to it.
Oh no, 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 no. It's, so aside from cosmic horror, there's sort of corporate horror. The company
Hmm.
doesn't care for you the way the universe doesn't care for you. All the confined spaces. A lot of people have compared this to a haunted house movie.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then the middle class or working class sort of tone of the crew of the ship.
Yes.
Um, any scenes that has worked especially well for you? We talked about things that didn't work that well, but
Yeah, I mean,
anything stand out for you?
I love the exploration of the alien ship from the time they left the lander. I enjoyed Dallas's sojourn in the air ducts, which is can be kind of cliche, but it really worked quite well in this film.
Hmm.
Um, and just I liked in the overall ways in which, well, I like that scene, the conflict over the door scene, which is kind of a more mundane scene, though I think is really sort of pivotal to the movie, and I find very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, the motion tracker is a great way to build suspense. Again,
Yes.
without showing things.
Yes. Agreed.
Um, yeah, and I would say yeah, the exploration of the alien ship to me is a big standout because of the fact that it was so alien and this is seen as a horror movie, but also there's so many terrific science fiction elements in this. Um, all right. We talked about things that didn't work. Anything else you want to throw in?
No, I think I already the things that either bother me a little bit or a lot, I've already outlined. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's in some ways it's just quibbling, and if you're going to talk on a podcast, you just got to say something negative, right?
All right.
No, and
Especially if
all,
your co-host is Mr. Negative.
yeah, well, well, I have to be difficult. This is my role.
So I would say one thing that wasn't a problem so much, but just a point of confusion. Because Giger did the design for both the alien and the alien
Hmm.
and the other alien ship, I wasn't sure if we were supposed to believe there was some sort of biological connection there.
Hmm.
And that, it wasn't just that the aliens were stowaways, but that they were somehow from the same environment as the space jockey.
Well, let me ask a question. I don't want a specific answer. Is there some in the various movies that come later that try to explain this or not, to your knowledge?
There is highly unnecessary backstory
Right.
about
I do
about about
understand.
about the space jockey and that
Okay.
civilization, about the
Okay.
creation of the aliens. So there's a bunch of it. I
Okay.
I think not only because I harp on this all the time about the pointlessness of that, but it also doesn't in some ways make a lot of sense.
Fair enough. I mean,
Yeah,
I've heard critiques of Prometheus, if that's what we're talking about.
yeah.
Um, you know, now I'm weirdly curious about all that. But anyway,
It's not Mystery Science Theater fun to watch that movie. I'll
yeah,
say
yeah.
that.
No,
And
I
I'm
do
sure I'm
understand
sure
that.
there are some people listening to this who think that Prometheus is the bee's knees, but I'm not a fan.
I do know that even people that I have listened to and read who are fans of this franchise don't particularly like Prometheus. I mean, my part of why I asked, I'm just curious, but I was not clear as a first time watcher who's trying to take all this in.
Right.
I came away, half of me thought that the space jockey was one of the xenomorph type aliens,
Hmm.
and then half of me thought, well, they must have been attacked by the xenomorph type aliens, and that's why the eggs are on the ship, and that's why the supposed distress call was actually a warning beacon. So, but I, obviously couldn't tell for sure. But I was, and to your point though, I guess the design of the space jockey
Hmm.
was not sufficiently different from the xenomorph, at least as I remembered what it looked like, to render a judgment that definitely distinct. How about that?
Okay. Yeah, that's reasonable. All right. So we mentioned, of course, that this, several years later gets a sequel
Hmm.
without knowing anything about it, right?
Yes.
Let's say you just saw this movie and you heard there was going to be a sequel coming.
Hmm.
I mean, what would you want out of a sequel to this movie?
I, it's a great question. I know I want to watch the sequel, partially because I know that it's also well regarded, and I know
Mhm.
some of the other ones are not.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, spoiler alert, I'm going to get pretty enthusiastic about that movie too,
yeah.
if we ever
So
do it.
okay. So knowing me, I hadn't really even thought about it because I just know it exists, so I just want to see it. And I know that it's more of an action film, and I know iconically, I know the image of Ripley's face next to the xenomorph, and I know
Hmm.
Ripley in the giant, mecha suit thing she's in.
Yeah, forget all
So
that. What
yeah,
would you want to see?
I don't even know what I want. I don't even know. I guess I would. I don't know what I want. I want to know what the corporation's up to. That's what I want to know,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and therefore, why did they know about this planet? Because clearly they did. I mean, I think it was subterfuge to say it was a distress signal and they were following their contract. Because it's not indicated at all until later that the corporation even knew that that was there.
Hmm.
Why the hell, if you know anything about these people, these aliens, would you want to bring this thing back to Earth? So not only what their motivation in that sort of, I mean, one presumes the corporation wants to make money because that's pretty a big theme, but this is a weapon. This is something, some technology you think you're going to be able to get from these creatures that I would want to know why they wanted to know it. I think
Hmm.
that's probably the main thing that I might want to know. What was the motivation behind this in the first place?
Okay. All right. I don't remember what I thought about the sequel, to be honest, but I was very happy with the sequel we got without giving anything away.
I mean, if I'd watched this movie in 1979 and I knew there was a sequel, actually, what my assumption would have been, much like a sequel to, say, Jaws or a sequel to a Dracula movie, it's going to be, we're going to find another way to fight the monster again. That was what I would assume would be the case.
Hmm.
And then the question is simply, did they do a good job or a bad job
Yeah.
at that? I don't know that I would have had much more expectation than that.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see your reaction to whenever we do an episode on aliens,
Sounds.
what Cameron did do with it.
They're
Okay.
they're blue, right? They're blue in this movie,
Yeah, they're blue.
and they're on the Titanic.
Okay, so let's wrap things up. Merch. Did you have any merch? Sounds like
Well,
no.
the closest that I can come, actually, the answer actually is no. I had no merch from this film because I didn't watch this film until 2 days ago, or whatever it was. But I kind of have some merch that, again, kind of like my reference to hanging with Dr. Z.
Hmm.
Um, do you know who Matt Gorley is? He's the well, you do. He's the producer of the Conan O'Brien's a friend.
Yeah, yeah.
So Gorley has a background in improv comedy.
Hmm.
I don't know if you listened to Super Ego or
No, I
True
haven't.
Comedy Bank comedy. So he has a thoroughly hilarious H.R. Giger impersonation. He just as a character,
Okay.
he plays the character of H.R. Giger, and it is hilarious.
Oh, okay.
And so there's a clip. If the audience just wants a taste, I found it last night. There's a clip on YouTube from Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend with, it looks like it may have been during the pandemic time because they're all on Zoom. Sona and Conan, and Conan they all look younger. Sona and Conan and Matt, and he does his HR, a very brief HR Giger, which then leads to Conan doing a whole lot of, um, oh my goodness, the German director who talks about nature and madness. Um, I'm blanking on his name. Grizzly Man, come on now.
Werner Herzog.
Werner Herzog, thank you. Good Lord. But there are episodes.
Zagot is a happy little creature.
Yeah, exactly. So Gorley's Giger, which can get a bit bizarre at times, he's been on. Though I mostly heard it on Comedy Bang Bang, which is mostly an improv comedy
Okay.
podcast where People come on and play characters as though it's a quote unquote talk show, and he's done Giger multiple times.
Oh, I'd love to hear
It
that. I didn't
slays
know
me.
that. Well,
It
thank you for
slays me.
another
Yeah,
introduction to something that I
yeah.
wasn't aware of. So I hate to say it, there's a now incredibly expensive to snag a copy of it, the action figure that came out after the movie
Mm-hmm.
was released,
Oh, the
which was kind
xenomorph.
of, yeah, the xenomorph was kind of
Mm.
tall. And I got it, and then I was going off to college, and like, what am I going to do with this thing? So since we had the store, I just donated it to the store, and it got sold to somebody at some point. So I also had the Nostromo cap. This is not the one that I'm wearing right now. I
Okay.
lost the original somewhere along the way, but I have since acquired another Nostromo cap. Yes, that's how much I love this movie. And I also want to mention something that is worth pondering if you enjoyed this movie and the sequel, are the Dark Horse comics, which are terrific.
Okay. I
Um,
do remember them being out, but never read them.
yeah, and a lot of people have said, after seeing Alien 3 and beyond, it's like, well, why didn't Hollywood just adapt one of those series? Because they're
Hmm.
really good, very thoughtful, interesting takes on the story, without giving anything away. But some of the questions you had
Hmm.
do get addressed in these comics,
I see.
which are not canon, obviously.
No, no.
Not that that
No,
matters.
Hollywood would do better if they looked sometimes to some of this ancillary fiction for adaptation.
Are you thinking of
Some
Star Wars?
I'm absolutely thinking of Star Wars.
Yeah, I strongly, strongly, strongly agree. Anything you wish you had now that you've seen the movie?
I mean, I'm at this point, my pat answer often is some kind of figure, but a small xenomorph would be cool. I could do that.
Okay. I thought like a little version of the space jockey done as a paperweight would be kind of cool to have on your desk. Put on bills that you
Absolutely. I
haven't
got
paid yet.
plenty of paper on my desk that needs paperweights.
Okay, so I think the moral of this movie is if your relatives are banging at the door demanding to come in, folks, just follow protocol.
Just follow protocol, man. Just follow protocol.
Just follow protocol. Well, anyway, well, thanks to everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.
Adios.
Oof, got a funny feeling in the chest, so we better wrap this up. Thanks for listening. You can find us on the podcast app or platform of your choice, where please like and subscribe, and also leave us a review. If you have any words for us, and you want to contact us directly, send us an email at someancientgeeks@gmail.com. Come on over and read our Substack blog at someancientgeek.substack.com, and you can also find us on Reddit, Facebook, Blue Sky, and other social media outlets. All content copyright 2025, Tom Grant and Stephen Taylor. Music by Reversed Image, whom you can find on Pixabay. See you next time.